Joining me today, we have Dr. Robin Sargent, founder of Idle Courses, Idle Talent, and Idle Academy. And she is going to talk to you about a gamified learning recipe. So without further ado, Robin, I will let you take over.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Stephanie. I'm so happy to be here with you and ELB and all of you that have showed up live with me today to talk about gamified learning. So, of course, we've got to demonstrate what we are trying to teach. And so I want you to join me on AHA Slides, and we are going to play little games as we go along through the content of a gamified learning recipe. So you can scan the QR code with your phone and have AHA Slides on your phone while you participate in the webinar on your desktop, or you can open another browser tab and go to ahaslides.com/learn game. Some other words were taken, so that's what we get, learn game. ahaslides.com/learn game. And oh, good. I see you guys are already joining me. I got 13 people out of 26 participants on this call. So I'd like to get the majority of you on here. It is important to me that this is a play shop and not a static webinar. So come play with me by joining me on AHA Slides. All right. I may move forward in the AHA Slides, but you can always join at any time, ahaslides.com/learn game, and it will remain at the top of my slides. So if you get booted out for whatever reason, you can just hop right back in. So my first question is, I just want to know what your current role is. I want to know who's in the audience, what type of experience you are. There you go. We got training managers. Are you a new instructional designer, an experienced instructional designer? Just want to know where my audience is. Okay. Because there are certain things that are, just so you know, training managers, I'm going to go over some fundamentals that you are probably going to be already familiar with, like learning objectives, but I think that it's going to be worth it to do a refresher, and of course, it'll serve our new idols. Good. All right. All right, so welcome in again. Today's Play Shop is all about the fundamentals of baking gamified learning. And so that's why it's called a gamified learning recipe. And just like Stephanie said, I'm Dr. Robin Sargent, but really I'm a huge learning nerd, just like probably most of you are. And I've been playing video games ever since I was a Nintendo baby. I wrote my dissertation on the gamification of online corporate training using self-assessments with points and levels. And I learned a lot about gamification from, the research and the quantitative research process that you have to go through for your dissertation. And I also learned a lot about what not to do in those experiments. And so that's what I'm here to share with you, is things that you probably may not be aware of unless you have dived deep into the gamified learning theory. And so that is what I want to share with you today. And I do plan on using a couple of baking metaphors and analogies. So just a fair warning there, right? Because if your ingredients are not clear or measurable, and you combine them with game elements, you're going to get a half-baked cake. So we know what our traditional learning, workplace learning looks like. It probably looks something like this, right? Where we have a long-standing dominated way of doing e-learning, and it's often associated with passive, one-size-fits-all approaches, and plenty of other things that we have learned, grown to hate, like large blocks of text, click next, and so on. And so where we should be going, and where some of the ways that you can enhance and update your training content, is through gamification. And it's all about infusing game elements into the learning process. There's a study that was conducted among 365 students at the Vocational School for Electrical and Computer Engineering. And what was interesting about this study is that they had a game-based app like course called Horses for Courses, right? And in Horses for Courses, they added game elements to improve the outcomes of their learners. And what they found was that this challenge-based gamification improved student performance in their vocation by 89.45% compared to their control group, which was the lecture-based education. And then overall, the performance of those students increased 34.75%. And so as instructional designers, understanding this transformation is crucial, as it can be something that reshapes the future of workplace learning and specifically education as a whole. And so if we're thinking that, and we are seeing all of these different results about the power of gamification in training, we want to make sure that we are mindful and strategic about how we add game elements to our training. And that is really what I want to focus on. I also want to share some examples first. How many of you are familiar with Harry Potter? Now, I picked this because I'm hoping that most of you have heard of, if not read, or watched the movies about Harry Potter. So yeah, go ahead and give me a thumbs up or a like on AHA Slides if you know what Harry Potter is. Okay, good. That's what I'm talking about. Go ahead and use the cry emoji if you have no clue what Harry Potter is. Okay, no one's crying. Everybody's with me. Everyone knows who Harry Potter is. Hogwarts, have you ever thought about how Hogwarts uses gamified learning? Hogwarts is an easy example because most of you are familiar with the series, and it's an easy illustration of this process. So since gamification simply means the use of game mechanics and experience design to digitally engage and motivate people to achieve certain behaviors or goals, this actually happens in Harry Potter. So think about it. At Hogwarts, what are they put first, right? The students are divided into teams or houses. And you guys all know what they are, right? We got Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, and Slytherin. And then in addition to them being put in each of their houses, these teams are competing throughout the school year to do what? They're competing to earn points for their houses in order to win a house cup at the end of the school year. And so these students, they either gain or lose points for certain behaviors, right? And remember, it's not just lessons, right? It's their lessons and their school behavior. You could probably even think of some examples of the school behavior right off the top of your head, right? Whenever they go to the bathroom and they fight the big troll, right? They lose points for fighting the troll, but then they earn points for beating the troll through dumb luck, right? That's what Professor McGonagall calls it. And so they also get points for defeating Lord Voldemort and so on. And so in this way, points reinforce or they discourage certain behaviors. And so while this, analogy at some point might break down for me, because, analogies and metaphors break down at some point, I think it does illustrate gamification added to a learning environment. Right. And it also illustrates that gamification influences learning by one of two processes. It either strengthens the relationship between, instructional design and the outcomes, which is a moderating process, or by influencing that learning directly, which is a mediating process. Another example you have in Harry Potter, right, is Hermione is awarded 10 points by correctly identifying the dangers of handling mandrakes. Remember those screaming plant things? And so this is an example of strengthening the relationship between instructional design quality and outcomes. We could also say that the gamification element of points and competition influence the student's behavior or attitude towards learning, even though they're doing something dangerous, like handling these screaming mandrakes that what happens if you hear them, right? It drives you mad or something, right? And it earns them points towards their ultimate goal, which is that house cup. there are two types of gamification, right? There was one where you can lay game elements on top of instruction that already exists, and that is to encourage behaviors in the course itself, or an attitude that will increase those learning outcomes by making it better in some way, right? You already have the instruction, you add these game elements to make it better in some way. Like what is done in Hogwarts to increase the student motivation to study, right? Because then if they pass their tests, then they get more points for their house. The other way to use gamification as a learning designer is to apply it to encourage a behavior or an attitude that will itself improve learning outcomes. Like, for instance, what is done in the example of Hogwarts when they add points to increase the student motivation to study. All right. Here's another one where they are given points, right, just to answer questions, right? It's not even whether that question is wrong or right necessarily, right? He just gives away points whenever he's teaching them about the Bogart, right? And that's another way where it's just answering questions about course materials is an effective learning strategy, we know, and then points added onto that reinforce the behavior we already know works. And that's where I'm going to keep on diving into. So, what do you think is the first step to gamifying your learning, right? What's the first step before you even select any of your gamification elements that you're going to add to your training? What do you need to do? Where do you start? And I'm going to ask you in AHA size. Oh, well, that's not right. It shows the answer. Let's see, hide those. Well, I just broke my own game. There's a broken game for you.
Paying attention, they know the answer.
Okay, so I've given you the answer. I hope you guys all get it right. Okay, good job, picking the wrong one. We have someone that picked the wrong one. I hope that's not happening on my other slides. Okay, good. All right. So even though I gave most of you the answer, I hope that I'll just pretend that you guys all got it right. And I'm like, wow, you guys do know the first step in gamifying your learning. And that, of course, is to identify your learning objectives, or what are those behaviors that you want to encourage in your course that lead to the behaviors that you want your at the end, right? Your learning outcomes. Now, I'm going to get more into what this is, but this is essentially in diagram form how gamification and game characteristics influence learning outcomes. And what you can see is they don't directly influence learning outcomes. Game characteristics, they can only influence the behaviors or attitudes of your learners. Now, this can go awry, right? If you put game characteristics or game elements on the wrong behaviors, or you can demotivate your learners from attempting to play that game or, do that training. So, for example, they have found that when people include the game element of leaderboards, and the leaderboards are shown and people see that it's too difficult, right, in order to rank on the leaderboard, they give up and they don't even try. And so in that example, right, that game element of a leaderboard has influenced the behavior of whether they participate or not, or their attitude about participation. And if they see that in order to get on the leaderboard and rank high, they don't really have a shot at it, well, then the behavior that you've just reinforced is one where they are going to quit. And so that is what game elements and game characteristics can influence only, is behaviors or attitudes. It does not directly influence the learning outcomes or the effectiveness of instructional content. Now, it's only behavior and attitude that can have that mediating or a moderating process, right, on instructional content that leads to your learning outcomes. mediating and moderating, right? Because it goes both ways for the behavior. So if you need, why that I show this, and I'll get into a little more detail later, but why I show this is because you have to identify the behaviors that you want to target with game elements before you select what those game characteristics are, because you have to have the behaviors that you want to trigger in order to select the game elements that trigger them, right? And so that's why you have to start with those behaviors. And we find those behaviors by what, right? We find those behaviors through those performance goals and those learning objectives. And so if the instructional content cannot effectively stand alone, right? If it's not already effective, incorporating things like points, badges, and leaderboards alone is ineffective, right? You're just putting icing on a cake stand. You don't even have a cake, right? And that's what's my most important thing for you to take away from this, right? Is that your content must be effective in and of itself before you can even consider adding gamification. So your first step in that gamified learning recipe is to identify and write out those clear, measurable performance goals and then the learning objectives that follow. So I know we have some newbies, I know we have some more experienced ones, and I know we have training managers on this call, but in order to level set, I'm going to quickly go through and make sure we're all on the same page of how we identify performance goals and write our objectives, and then how those connect to our game elements. And so on the job, right, we want people to learn in order to perform, right? They need to be able to do something on the job. If I break that down a little bit more, and you think about how you're going to write performance goals or learning objectives, the knowledge section, right? They can be included in your enabling objectives. But when you're writing a big performance goal, like what's the big outcome of this training, it needs to be a skill. It needs to be something that they can do, right? And that's what's included in your terminal objective. That's your end goal, is a skill. Up until they reach that skill, they might have component skills that they learn along the way, and they might have knowledge components that they have to learn along the way. And so you can have a combination of knowledge and skills as your enabling objectives that lead to your terminal objective, which is your performance goal, right? And so just the basics, like I said, I'll run through it just to make sure we're on the same page. But if you're going to write a learning objective, you need an actor, right? That's your audience. Who has to complete this performance? And then you also need hold on, sorry. My notes went away. I'm right here. Here they are. There we go. And then, so you need your actor, which is your audience. You need your behavior. What is the performance that you need them to be able to demonstrate? What are the conditions, which is the circumstances, the context, or the environment in which this behavior must be performed? And the degree, right? How well must the actor, right, your learner, perform this behavior? So those are the ABCs of learning objectives. Another way to look at it is the who, the what, the how, and the how well. Now, you can have some learning objectives that do not necessarily include a degree, right? But your all learning objectives must include, and I'm using this interchangeably, performance objective, learning objectives, performance goals, right? I'm using them interchangeably, but just so that I'm very clear, performance goal is your end goal, right? It's your learning outcome. Learning objectives are the enabling objectives that get to the terminal objective, which is your performance goal. So I've said it clearly, but I do use those words interchangeably. All right. But you always have to have a behavior, but you don't always have to have a degree. But if you want a complete learning objective, what are you going to have? You're going to have all four of these things. And so what's better than to tell you, but to show you? And so as an example, I would say that my performance goal for you all, written in this formula is gamified learning participants, that's y'all, will be able to select meaningful game elements for learning, that's the behavior, when designing workplace learning, so that's the condition, with a high level of proficiency, ensuring the elements target effective learning behaviors, right? That's my performance goal for you. That's how you write both performance goals and the enabling objectives that would get us there. This all is going to come to be meaningful to game elements, I promise you. All right, so here's another one that I want you to keep in mind, because we're going to think through how we could add game elements to this type of performance goal. Customer service representatives will be able to apply quality service standards for customers on the phone that exceeds customers' expectations, right? And whenever we're looking at these type of objectives, we're always looking if they pass the SMART goals test, right? Is it specific? Is it measurable? Is it relevant? And is it time bound, right? And so we know another way to just kind of judge it is it something that an outside party can observe, right? And you can observe whether a customer representative has exceeded a customer's expectation. Why? Because they have to fill out those feedback forms at the end of a customer service interaction, right? And so that's how we know that the degrees and the conditions and the behaviors are all measurable, and they're all, we could probably even add more time bound to the degree if we want to, right? Within 3 months, within the first phone call, whatever that degree is. That's your terminal performance goal. Right? If I was to include enabling objectives that went along with my example here, I might include something like learners will apply the quality service strategies that identify what they do for customers, what the customers expect, and the business impact of their actions. Learners will assess how the company's standards and processes affect the entire customer service experience and perspective in order to deliver consistent, exemplary customer service. And they'll be able to use active listening skills to identify customer service needs to recover and prevent future customer service failures. I just wanted to make sure that we all understood how that works and how they come together, because it's very important before you select your game elements that you know all of the behaviors that you're targeting. The one at the very end, which is your outcome, and all of the enabling objectives along the way, because you can tie game elements to each of the behaviors in each of your objectives and even your instructional strategies. And that's really what I bring this up for. All right. So I told you I'd come back to this. And so now that we've gone over, just the basics of setting up your performance goals and those learning objectives, again, back to gamified learning theory, we know that it's a process of using those game attributes. And so as you can see, the game element on the left does not directly influence learning outcomes like instructional content does. And so it is either a mediating or a moderating process. And so if you need an explanation about why I keep saying mediating or moderating process, I've got an example for you. So for example, say you're at work and the work has a pizza party, right? And after everybody gets together and they go to this pizza party, they notice that there is an uptick in employee morale and the speed of production has increased, right? Now, you would not say that pizza alone directly influenced work speed, right? Because I can't hand somebody on the conveyor belt a piece of pizza and then they're going to put the screws and the bolts together faster, right? It doesn't work like that. But I know that pizza and organizational support can influence the behavior and the attitude of employee morale, which directly influences work speeds or productivity or outputs. It's the same kind of thing with gamified learning. And so that is why you want to target the behaviors and not the outcomes, right? And you want to target those behaviors that we know are effective. Because we don't want to try to just put points on something and think pizza is going to increase people's work speed, right? Just because you put points on something doesn't mean that people are going to get more questions right. Doesn't work like that. So now you can see it again, right? game characteristics, I'm going to say it one more time, right? Repetition is a evidence-based practice. If I repeat it, this is the one thing I really want to sink in for you. And of course, that is that game characteristics must and only directly influence behavior and outcomes. So for example, you can add points and levels to increase people's propensity to take self-assessments or quizzing activities. However, if you put those points and levels on a bunch of true-false questions, which we know in workplace learning are just kind of worthless questions to ask, right? It's not an effective use of an assessment metric. Then what are you getting, right? If the self-assessments are poorly designed and not related to the performance goal, then there is no effect on learning. You're just giving away points for no good reason. All right, so now that I have drilled into you, right, how gamification works, right, I want to get you involved. Dink, 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 dink. Notice how even this platform has several different gamification elements, and we're going to pull some out and see what you guys know about gamification elements, what you've been paying attention to. They're everywhere, right? You find gamification elements on LinkedIn. You find it, you know, on even Netflix has games. You find it in most of your social apps. You can find it in training. You can play regular games. It's pretty much everywhere, right? Marketing uses a lot of gamification elements, right, to target behaviors. All right, you got 20 of you? Does 23 want to play? All right. All right. Gamification can only directly influence. Dink, 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 dink.
We need some countdown music.
I did have countdown music, but it went away whenever the other counter started, didn't it? All right. Yes, behaviors and attitudes. By the way, there are a total of, as you guys probably saw, 4 quiz questions that I have peppered along the way. So play and play to win, because we have an ELB learning t-shirt to give away at the end to the winner. All right, that's right. So that's, of course, the one main thing that I wanted you to know, right? Gamification only directly influences behaviors and attitudes. That's why I made sure to reinforce it with the self-assessment. Okay, so Wendy, Stabby, and Grace are at the top of our leaderboard. You guys are our winners. And so hopefully these other 2 questions will be a tiebreaker for y'all. All right, so I know that you guys are not gamification experts, but I am sure that you can help me list some gamification elements. So like points, I've already mentioned that one. I'm sure there are 100,000 other ones that you can list as far as elements. Badges, leaderboards. Yep, we got our evil access up there. Points, badges, and leaderboards. What else we got? Challenges. Okay. Scorecard, competition, levels. Yep. What else we got? We got anything else besides levels, points, badges? Time clock, a score, XP. Yep. Avatars. Good job. Nicely done, wizard. Tasks, a treasure box. I got you. Tokens. Love it. You got any more? Well done. All right, good job. All right, so let's break it down a little bit more. All right, so you've come up with some great elements, and I bet you can think of more if we drill down into the different categories. All right, so one category that we group game elements into is achievement and progression. So what are some examples of this, right? So one example I'll give you to get started for achievement and progression would be points. What are some of those other things? Leveling up, scores, certificates? Yes. What else you got? Yep, a progress bar. Well done, well done. Badges? Yep. Upgrades? Exactly. Perfect. Prizes? And even in a traditional school, we've got, oh, I'm not going to give it away yet. You guys still working. Checkpoints? Yeah, great. Customizable? Yeah, maybe you could like customize your avatar as as an achievement. Stars? Beautiful. See how many more game elements we get whenever we start thinking about the different categories. Sweets, yeah, so some treats, some rewards. Great. You guys didn't miss any of the ones on my list. I think the only other one I had on my list was grades, right? In many ways, that's kind of a gamification element, right? Where you can give them a grade. How about actual rewards? What are some game elements that are rewards in a game? Whoop. All right. Besides points and badges, trophies, a day off. Yeah, exactly. You can get some tangible rewards, some gift cards, money, gold, financial, food, better avatars. I want a different colored cat. Extra breaks. Yeah, we all need some extra breaks. You want some lunch? Okay, well, I know how you guys are motivated. You guys food motivated over here. Recognition. Yeah, physical gifts, certificates, bragging rights, upgrades. Awesome. Some of the ones that are on my list are equipment, tools, collectibles, bonuses, the power-ups that you get in the game. This is fun. You guys get this. All right, another category of a game characteristic is the element of story. So under story, what are some ways that you can piece out those game elements of story? A road race, a conflict, escape rooms. Nicely done, Irene. Yep. Side quests. Yep. Creating mystery. I love that. Anecdotes, a hero's journey. Yeah, think about the game element. How do they weave story into games? A map, a quest. Yep. Mario Karts. Narration. Yes. Traveling during missions. Yeah, I like missions. That's good too. I had many of the same things. Think of scenarios, interactive stories. You guys said narratives, a fictional game world. You can fantasy, a theme. Well done here. All right. How about some examples of time? How is time a gamification element? Think of some different ways they include time in games. Race to complete, hourglass, yeah, like a countdown. Stopwatch, beat the clock, yep. Progress bar, yes. See how many more we come up with when we think about them in categories? Module deadline, sure. Use it or lose it, maybe? A time bomb, I like that. Oh, definitely, that'd be an exciting use it or lose it. Max quantity. Yeah, like how much can you get in a certain amount of time? Great. All right. The other unique thing about gamification is that you can make it personalized. What are some of the ways that where you can piece out what are those game elements of personalization? Avatar. Yep, there it is. All right. Avatars, usernames, customizable avatars. Yep. Choose your name. You guys got it. Yeah, you can name the characters. All right. Branching scenarios, right? You can have them skip things. Choose your role. Awesome. Yeah, maybe they can do a color selection and a background. My kids are always playing Fortnite and Roblox. So when I think of game elements these days, that's usually where my head goes. All right. Examples of micro interactions. So these are those tiny little game elements. For example, like a toggle. What other kind of micro interactions have you guys seen? Equip items, feedback, pop up that says good job. Yep, a slider bar. A hint button, yes. Well done, Steph. Text choices with characters. Yes, yep. That's micro one. Fit the puzzle piece. Oh yeah, so I guess you're talking to a non-playable character, right? So a completion bar. Yeah, the only other one that I had that I think is not on this list, I had Easter eggs and maybe an animated rollover. Just to kind of wrap them all up, right? I wanted you to pull them from you and see which ones you guys are already familiar with. But just based on that those same categories, I've just listed some of the game elements, and I think you guys got most of the same ones that I've listed up here. So you guys are very familiar with games and game elements. I'm sure you've seen them, and you'll start looking for them more in places if you are not familiar. And I wanted to show you an example of a gamified training that I thought was pretty cool. And I don't think a lot of people have seen this one. And it's called the Medieval Swansea. Right. And so it is an e-learning course that's been gamified, and you are going to find out how this guy was hung at the gallows and then came back to life. And so the end goal is to, find out what your verdict is. But of course, what are you doing along the way? You are going to be learning through story. You can also see that story is integrated into this game through a full-on medieval theme, right? With the different characters and the imagery, and even the way that we're going to go talk to some of these characters. We have St. Mary's Church, right? I get to interact with this character right away. I get to have an interactive conversation. And so William of Codenston is chaplain priest to the De Bruze family. What do you ask him? And then I say, where were you when Crag was hanged? And he says, and he gives answers, and we can continue. And then you'll notice here that we have collected him as a person. So he's now become a collectible. So we are making progress and we are collecting things. All right. So many of these game elements can be stacked and layered on. As you can see, right, you can collect people, you get to interact with the characters, and the whole time you are learning something, right? But they've wrapped it all up in story, in collecting, and you get to collect objects, you get to interact with the characters, right? You get progress, right? As you collect people, as you collect objects, you are making progress. You also get to know where you are on your map, because there are different places on this map that you can go and you can talk to people. What I love that's so interesting about this is, for example, they are not just pushing any of the training or the learning content on you. Instead, it's game first. And if you need help, there's help. And if you need resources, right, there's links to resources. And you can go, let's see if I can I click on it? Oh, good. It opens in a new tab. And then you get to, see the boring looking resources. And how many people are going to go right back to the game and try to figure it out by talking to the people and interacting and collecting them and the objects. And then whenever you have finished collecting these things, then you get to say what your verdict is. I just thought this was a fun example that showed multiple different layers of gamification elements that target specific behaviors. And so that's my question to y'all.
Before we jump to the next quiz question, what were the learning objectives for that game? What was Medieval Swansea created for?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It was created to teach people more about the medieval times, right? And so you learn about the medieval times through this story, right? So you learn about the different dioceses, right? When you talk to the priests and how those things were arranged, and every little conversation you have with the person, right, gives you another little piece of information about the medieval times.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. So just quickly, I just wanted to know, I kind of, disappeared, came back, and I ran through that. But just at a glance, what are some of those game elements that you noticed? Yeah, I like how you put graphics. It definitely is part of the game, isn't it? Right? It has a whole look and feel. You get scenarios, you get points, you get to collect things, characters, storytelling. It's interactive. Yep. Great. Awesome. Oh, I don't think I meant to go straight to there. But those are okay. So these are all the game elements that you noticed in that game. And you also, I hope that you're starting to see game elements in a different way, right? They want you to interact with the characters, right? Because that's how you learn pieces of information about the medieval times, right? And so what do? They reward the behavior of talking to the characters to pull in that information, right? And as you collect things, right, that's just another way to encourage the behavior to go and talk to the people to learn more about whatever it is, that objective that you're trying to get to. Figure out how that guy died and then didn't die. All right. So we know about the game elements. We've seen an example. We've called out the different examples of those game elements in that example course. Now, what are those evidence-based practices and learning strategies that we know increases learning effectiveness? Like, it is peer-reviewed, it is evidence-based, like this for sure increases learner effectiveness. I'll go ahead and give you one, and that is self-assessments, right? We know through empirical studies that self-assessments increase learning effectiveness. All right, what else you got? Go. Repetition. Yep. Nicely done. Reviewing what you learned. Yep. If you don't know them all, don't worry. I'm going to go over them, but I want to see how many you know. Feedback. Well done. Reflection. Story-based. Interaction. Interaction is not necessarily leads to learning effectiveness, right? Let's see. Yeah, so repetition, making it fun enough to replay. That's what I call time on task. Hands-on, now knowledge checks. Well done. All right, so let's just go through them. I saw that a couple on my list were missing on your list, so I think it's worth it just to cover what those are. And so time on task, I think you guys mentioned that one. Time on task refers to the amount of time that learners spend attending to those learning tasks. And we know that more time on task increases the learning effectiveness, right? Just like somebody said, if they go and repeat it, that of course it falls under this strategy of time on task. Retrieval practice. I think that you guys mentioned that one as well. So that retrieval practice or self-assessments, right? Anytime that you are retrieving from long-term memory back to your working memory. And so if you are learning something by reading it in a book and then hearing it in a class, and then you need to bring it to mind to retrieve it in a quiz, right? So that's retrieval practice. We know that strategy works as well. Feedback, I think you guys included that one. And so, of course, we know that feedback is important so that individuals know what they did right or wrong so that they can improve, right, or do better. And once they know what is good and what isn't, then they're able to adapt their behavior. Let's see. Social learning, right? I bet you're like, oh yeah, that one. So we know that social learning works. As a matter of fact, social learning is something that's so important to us. It is the way that we learn from the very beginning, right? Right there as little baby toddlers, right? We are learning through social learning. So the brain is a social organ. And so by building close personal relationships and by having an asset that, a group of peers can, talk about and refer to and discuss and work problems around is how you incorporate social learning. And we know that that works. Spaced practice, right? Where you deliver the content in small portions over several days or several weeks, right? And we know that that works, right? So when content is reintroduced at specific intervals, then that can actually prevent what they call training decay. And so you can integrate these practice activities in the form of reading or quiz or scenario-based interactions, right? All of that can be applied to some type of space practice. Interleaving, right? This is where you go between several related skills at once, right? They're related, but they're different, and you're alternating them. And so this is, of course, for those more advanced learners in whatever the topic is, right? Because you have to have a strong foundation in whatever that topic is in order to use interleaving for it to be effective. But once you know that you have a pretty good foundation for that topic, your learners do anyway, then you can use interleaving, right? So for example, for a course about reading financial reports like cash flow, profit and loss, etc., rather than simply teaching those concepts with generic examples of the formats, you can task your learners to bring in the annual report from 2 of their clients. And then as each type of financial report is taught, the learners look to real world examples, right, of how to read and interpret those reports. And so it's like a focused task switching, right? And that can actually lead to better overall performance in like a number of applications, right? From sports all the way through workplace training. Dual coding, this one's pretty basic, but we know that it's effective. And so it is one of those strategies that we would want to enhance with game elements, right? To target that effective strategy. And that is just based on the idea that our minds process visual cues and verbal information separately and simultaneously, right? It's happening right now. So in the context of learning, that means that materials that combine words and images are more effective than those that are text alone. Elaboration, this is a cognitive learning strategy, and it involves enhancement of information that clarifies or specifies the relationship between the information to be learned and related information. So for example, your prior knowledge and experience, right, is related to the current information. I did an elaboration, right, even between Hogwarts and Harry Potter and gamification of learning, right? That's another example of elaboration. Concrete examples, taking an abstract concept like the examples of matter and making it real, right? Making it based off of real life experiences to solidify the meaning of the concept. So for example, a quarter could be thought of as taking 1 slice of pizza. I guess I'm on a pizza kick this round. And then it's out of 4 equally cut slices. Or in this image, right, calling out the actual physical things that are examples of matter. All right. So now that we are familiar with the learning strategies that we know are evidence-based and effective, How can you use gamification to increase time on task behaviors? Give me those gamification elements that you would use to increase time on task behaviors. You get double points for the next 10 minutes. All right, Zoe, there you go. But you got the idea, right? Levels or stages of a task, right? Exactly, right? They have to, be on a certain amount spending. You have to spend more time to increasing the levels. Practice and simulation. Oh, here you go. Was anybody else typing? There you go. Multiple steps or a progress bar. Indeed. And this is how I want you to think about these gamification elements, right? Combining them, right, with strategies that we already know are effective. And being intentional about it, just like that example I gave you in the beginning, right? If we're not intentional about it, you can increase the wrong behaviors and attitudes. All right, looks like you guys ran out of, oh, you're still typing. All right, we'll move on. How can you use gamification for retrieval practice? I bet you guys got a lot of ideas for this. Those self-assessments. How are you going to reward or incentivize people to do the behavior of taking more self-assessments or, retrieving things from their memory? Badges, prizes. Yep. Competition with rating for correct replies, maybe. Yep. Leaderboards, coins, points. Yep. Exactly. All right. How can you use gamification to deliver immediate feedback? You kind of saw it in that medieval game, didn't you? Right? As soon as I chose a selection, something happened, right? Hints, yes. Lose lives if you get it wrong, yes. Yeah, that's right. Because if you an action in the game can be feedback, right? If you don't jump fast enough in Mario, then you fall in the hole and you die. That's your immediate feedback. Immediate feedback doesn't have to be text, does it? Peer group collaboration, applause or boos, lives, Virginia. You show progress, symbols, give points. Yep, gain or lose points, symbols. Excellent. All good additions there. How can you use gamification for social learning? How can you increase people's behavior to participate in social learning? Think of Facebook and LinkedIn and what they do. Teamwork. Okay, well, how do you use gamification in teamwork? This type of exercise. Yes, this is one of those types of exercise, right? You guys are all learning from each other right now. So well done, Stacy, calling out very meta of you. Having a chat feature, competitions, having to work together, a cohort. Yeah, like, and you could even theme the cohort, right, to make it more of a game. Avatars, problem solving. You can also just think about some of those social media platforms, right? They are rewarding the behaviors that they want on that platform. So for instance, what do they have under posts? They have those dopamine releasers of likes and hearts and insightful comments, right? They show you how many views you get on your posts because they want to increase the behavior of you posting more regularly to reach a larger audience and to stay on their platform. So we want to do similar things, but for learning. All right. How can you use gamification to incorporate story, right? Because we know that people learn well through story. I actually missed that one in my list. But that's, how our mental models are made up. They're made up through story. And so what are some of the ways that you can use gamification to incorporate story? Role play, case studies, great job. That's what I was looking for. Some plots, some very deep plots. Building consequences, yes, for sure. Plot twists, challenges, quests, branching scenarios, excellent. Spaced practice. I'm going to encourage people to do the behavior of spaced practice. What kind of game elements can you add to increase that behavior? Oh, some streaks. I like that. Nice. Points for coming back every day. Yep, they do that. They do that a lot in those diet apps. Right? Have you guys ever checked out like a Noom or a Lose It or whatever? They give you points for coming back, or even in Candy Crush, right? You get an extra special reward if you come back so many days in a row. New game drops. Yeah, that's a good one too. Leaderboards. Yeah, so how many days active? Carmen adds there. Well done. And then we're almost to the end. Don't worry, I only got one more after this. How can you use gamification for interweaving? You know, that's where you are doing different skills related to the same topic. Yeah, revisiting concepts in later courses. Nice. Building on tasks. Watch a related video before playing the game. I like it. Let the learner choose paths. Nice. All right. You guys got it. I think you're ready to go build some gamification. How can you use it for dual coding? You know, I'm going to skip this one. It's kind of dumb. All right. Also, it's 2:00. All right. So remember our customer service representative thing. I was going to ask you guys, what are some of the ways that you would look at these behaviors and you would think about how you would add gamification to this course. But since we're kind of out of time and I really want to get a winner for the t-shirt, I'll skip that one. And I want to play our little quiz. Because I think you guys got it. Ready? Lexus is ready. Here we go. All right, we got to get our tie break winner. Gamification can only directly influence. I want 100% accuracy on this one. I think I gave you a lot of time. 3, 2, 1. All right. Yes. Well done. Well done. Okay. Let's see our leaderboard. Oh, we have a winner. Savvy. All right. Question 3 of 4. All right. Put the steps for building gamified learning in order. You're, of course, going to make some inferences here. The faster you put them in order, the more points you get. Three, two, one. All right. So the first one is to establish your performance goal, right? Because you have to have your end performance goal in order before you can create learning objectives for that performance goal. And then you need to select your effective learning strategies, and then you tie them to your game elements, right? Because you need to add game elements to the behaviors that you want to increase. Don't cry, Steph. It's all right. I made it hard on purpose. Zoe is rocking it. Oh my goodness, Zoe, you just like came out on top, didn't you? Let's see, we got one more. Last question. And this one's tricky too, but I didn't have a lot of questions, then I wanted to put one more on there. All right, match the game element that best relates to the learning strategy. Which game element would you use in order to trigger the behavior for that strategy? You could argue for a lot of different ones. Just what makes, which one's the easy answer? Three, two, one. Oh man, I made that. This one was a junk question. But yeah, I just put retrieval practice points, social learning leaderboard, right? Space practice countdown, and then your concrete examples story. All right, here we go. Who's getting our t-shirt? Zoe. Well done, Zoe.
Cool.
Yay.
Zoe, I will email you after this to get your t-shirt size and address. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Zoe. That was fun. All right, so you guys can all connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where I hang out the most. You can find more about our vocational school at idlecourses.com. And I want to see if there's any questions.
All right. I think I know we had the question about the medieval game and we answered that. If there are any more questions, you can put them in the Zoom questions panel, or I think you can put them in the AHA slides as well, and Robin will be able to see those there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I know we are a little bit over, a few minutes over, but I think that was worth it for the quiz at the end. And I think Zoe definitely thinks it was worth it. She got a shirt. But thank you so much, Robin, for joining us today and sharing this information with us. I love the AHA slides. I think that's really awesome.
Me too. I just love a way to be able to talk to you guys, even though we're in the webinar. So thank you so much, everyone, for playing along today.
Yes, thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for playing along in the AHA slides. This was recorded, so we'll be emailing that out to you later today. And you can hopefully join us on another webinar soon. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Yes, thank you.